when it comes to marketing your medical practice. So the social media part is just a very small component. So then you can break it down even further as should you be on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Facebook, all those things, be everywhere, be omnipresent. However, one thing that I constantly see is that medical practices, they will put all of their eggs in that social media basket. They think that yeah, because I post every day or I'm on stories every day or I've hired a videographer or even a social media manager and my content is just, so beautifully and well done that that's all I need to do. But that's not all you need to do. You need to also go out into the community. You need to build an email list. You need to nurture the email list. You need to host events because all of these are different touch points that help more eyes land on your business.
Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to Scaling Practice Management, the show where we help practice managers grow smarter, not harder. My name is Jakub Grajcar. I'm the head of marketing at Talk AI, where we deliver AI medical front desk agents for medical practices. And actually, we help over 300,000 patients, unique patients, every single month. And my guest today is Cheri Cobb, a growth and marketing expert helping medical practices reclaim missed revenue. And she's been doing that for over 15 years in the medical space. Cheri, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I am doing great. How about yourself?
I'm feeling great. I don't recall how long it's been since I last recorded an episode. I think a week or 2 weeks. Too long, too long. I could record these every single day. Love running the show, so I'm very excited that we get to have this conversation here today. And yeah, I'm glad we're recording. I'm doing quite fine. Thank you for asking. Got my big extra helping of coffee in my talking mug here. I was just about to spill that on my laptop. Sometimes I cheat and I have water in the mug. Don't tell anyone. But today is coffee and you're gonna feel it.
Today's coffee. Okay. Look, no
Okay.
judgment zone. No judgment zone.
Yeah. No,
I'm
judging over
actually look,
coffee?
I'm actually drinking water this morning. Normally it's
Okay,
coffee,
awesome.
but
It
yes.
balances out. It balances out. I got both. Anyway, all right. So I'm really excited to talk today. I mean, it's going to be an episode related to marketing. So definitely, I'm in the zone where I'm somewhat familiar with some of the concepts we'll be talking about here today. Still looking to learn new things, and definitely marketing in the healthcare space, marketing for practices is a unique sort of beast. But first, a little bit of a warm up before we start. Cheri, I'm really curious about your answer to this question. What is the most fun thing you've done? I typically ask this year thus far, but it's just February, so maybe either this year or last year.
Okay. I'm glad you actually extended my deadline because I was gonna say something this year, but I'm like, no, the year just started. Um, I'll stick to it though. I went to Baltimore with one of my friends. Her name is Sissy. And we actually just relaxed. We went to a spa and we stayed there for a couple of hours. We had massages. We went in different saunas. We went in tons of heated pools and jacuzzis. I was so overwhelmed with the amount. But that was something that I did that was super fun this year so far.
Okay. Do you often get to have these kinds of breaks and take some time to yourself?
So, yes and no. I travel often for different clients, but when I'm traveling, I'm not really counting that as leisure because I am working, but this was 100% a leisure trip. So to answer your question, I don't do it enough. How about that?
Mm. I totally get that. You mentioned you travel a lot. Over the years, I've come to realize that traveling is its own sort of skill. So, if you travel a lot, what is your top travel tip? What would you say?
Do your research before you go. So there was this I think I went to Italy, I wanna say about 2 years ago, right? And this is something that I didn't know. Italy, they have these outlets, where we plug up things, and theirs are completely different. So as we would have a typical charger, the header piece, as we would have a typical charger here, in America, when we go over to Europe, you have to have a specific type. So if I wouldn't have looked that up on TikTok, then everything just probably would have been dead my entire trip. So just do your research before you travel. If even if it's just scrolls, doom scrolling the internet, there is somebody that has made a video on something that you didn't know.
Yeah, not all scrolling is doom scrolling. Sometimes it's learn scrolling, right? And
Productive scrolling.
y-
Yeah, there you
yeah,
go.
we're coining that. We're cutting that on the show here today. It's definitely true. It gets worse, Shuri. Even my brother, for example, lives in the UK, and the outlets there are different to the outlets here in Poland. So even within the same continent, because the UK is still part of Europe, even if not the European Union. That there's still this difference. And I remember when I was flying out to the US in November last year for ModMed Momentum. I should record an episode just about that, like a solo one. That would be new. But anyway, I was buying the charger, kind of the accessory that you need to kind of switch from one type of what did you say, headpiece, to the
Yeah,
other.
headpiece,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
I'm
was
sure
buying
there's a
that
more
like
fancier
yeah.
term, but
Yeah, not at the airport, but because there it's super expensive. But I had to like hit a shop right on my way to the airport because that was the one missing piece. I remember that. Thank you for answering that question, and definitely that's something that all these little actionable tips, it all adds up. Speaking of tips, as we launch into the main part of the show, I definitely want to ask you the classic must-have, everybody gets it question of the show, and here it goes. Sharit, what is your number one tip for successfully growing a healthcare practice?
is to be involved and to know your numbers. There's so many times I run into different medical providers and they're just so out of touch with certain aspects of their business that they need to have some sort of knowledge about, or at the very least track, so that they can keep up with certain growth, certain areas of growth, and just simply be able to excel in what it is that they do overall. And it starts with knowing where you are, because if you know where you are systematically, then you're able to scale, make changes, pivot as needed, stop doing the things that are not causing that increase in revenue. And if you don't know your numbers, you simply just can't do that. So that would be my number one tip.
Yeah, yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, I think somebody listening to this would likely respond, but there's so many numbers to keep track of, and so many ways to keep track of them. Could we simplify it for them somehow? What are the most important numbers to track, and how to do it?
Sure. So, one of the main things that you need to be tracking, and this is oftentimes missed, and it's simply because we have more sexier analytics like social media followers and things that you and I know really don't matter that much. But one of the main things that I track with our clients is book to consultation rate, or lead to consultation rate. And the reason why I say that is because you want to know what's coming in, and then you also wanna know how much of what's coming in is ending up on your schedule, because that's what this is all about. Social media is just a tool to help us meet our business goals, but oftentimes people obsess over the metrics and the numbers that just feed your ego and not feed your bank account. But knowing what your lead to consultation rate is each and every month, that will help you go so far.
How do you track those leads then? Are there any automated systems for that? From the perspective of a practice, I wonder if there's tools to use here.
Absolutely, there are tons of tools. That's why I love what I do, because I'm a systems person. I love troubleshooting and figuring things out and clicking here and clicking there. I've always been that way. So yes, there is literally a tool for everything that you need. And if some people will say, "Oh, the tools are they're a little too expensive. That's just another expense I don't want to have right now." Well, I always like to take it back to the good old days where we Google sheet everything. Well, it was Google Excel then, or maybe it still is. We call it Google Sheets now. So building formulas inside of Google Sheets that will help you track certain numbers in your business. And I know that that takes a skill. Google Sheets and formulas is not something that you just learn to do overnight. But that's where you hire help, you outsource, you delegate the things that take you longer than 20 minutes to get done.
The other thing I'm thinking about lead to consultation rate is could you give the watchers and listeners a little bit of a benchmark here? Like what's a good rate? What should they look at? Like is should it be close to 100? Is 50% good? Like give us an idea of what good and bad looks like here.
So that is a very great question. Unfortunately, it is not as black and white as we would love it to be. It really just depends on the size of the practice. We have accounts that have about 7 or 8 providers, about 14 staff. So for them, with the amount of volume that comes through, I'm not accepting nothing less than at least a 45% conversion rate. We have accounts that there's a solo provider, maybe an esthetician and one front desk person. I'll work with them a little bit, but the goal is to get them there to that 45% or higher.
All right. Well, that at least, gives them some sort of anchor, right? To look at to see, if they're in a good spot with that. So thank you so much for sharing that. And we'll add that tip to, I keep saying like, or I keep thinking that there's like a vault of these tips. And it is true at one point we want to have maybe an ebook that we'll keep updating or like an ongoing list of these. Everyone is unique so far over, I think, 19 episodes of the show so far. So thank you for adding yours. And I think it leads us very smoothly to just the topic of today's conversation. Definitely want to talk about marketing with you. Definitely want to talk about lead management. I know this is something that you specialize in, but let's start at the beginning. So we're looking at a medical practice. You kind of set the range yourself of kind of how small or how large they might get. It's a big discipline, marketing, of course, but I think one of the most common questions from beginners is if I want to market my practice, where should I go? Where should I do that? Which channels? Do I go on Instagram? Do I need to have a TikTok? I'm a doctor. Why should I have a TikTok? I wonder what your thoughts are on that. How would you respond to that? Which channels to focus on?
So, another great question. When you think about medical, and here's the thing, I work and focus a lot with aesthetic practices, right? So a lot of aesthetics is visually appealing. So the visuals matter, right? And even when it just not just aesthetics, but even when it comes down to building trust, because that's ultimately what we're doing with our marketing and social media platforms, right? We're building trust. So when it comes down to building trust, ask yourself which platforms do you think you can easily do that? Or which platforms do you think that you're comfortable with doing that? Because again, building trust is the goal. So if you're the type of person that, if you prefer a lot of writing, a lot of text, then there's a place, for you. You can even try Substack. You can try LinkedIn. I'm sure the only benefit with well, not benefit, but lack of benefit with Substack is there are more decision makers like yourself, more providers, more doctors typically on that platform. So then it boils down to, the short form video platforms. And I know LinkedIn is, they're trying to do that. Yeah, they're trying. And then video is just it's action stimulating media. And if you can create video on any platform, that's where I would tell you to be. Now when it boils down to social media, because I think something that I want to focus on, you said what all does it take when it comes to marketing your medical practice. So the social media part is just a very small component, right? So then you can break it down even further as should you be on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Facebook, all those things. Be everywhere, be omnipresent. That's why you delegate and hire help. However, one thing that I constantly see is that medical practices, they will put all of their eggs in that social media basket. They think that, yeah, because I post every day or I'm on stories every day or I've hired a videographer or even a social media manager and my content is just, so beautifully and well done that that's all I need to do. But that's not all you need to do. You need to also go out into the community. You need to build an email list. You need to nurture the email list. You need to host events because all of these are different touch points that help more eyes land on your business.
Wow, that's a lot of threads to pull on here
Yeah.
of
And
where
it
to
and
even
it
be.
is it gets that deep because, the thing is, a lot of medical practices, they are looking for this, this answer in the box or this magic button that you push and it does all the things, but, it's like a car, lots of parts and pieces to keep it going, right? So that's just the main thing that you gotta understand.
What I particularly like about your answer here, love, in fact, is that you said that they should focus on something that they can easily do or comfortably do. I do marketing consultations of my own from time to time, and that's something that a lot of people that come to me ignore. Of course, you have to look at where your audience is and how to reach them, but typically there's more than one option to do that. So then this other layer of, okay, but what actually are you passionate about when it comes to creativity? Are you passionate about writing, about a video medium? I'm actually passionate about audio mediums. That's why I love podcasts so much. I'm more of a listener than a watcher typically. And so where do you go? Of course, not always you'll be able to kind of marry the two, right? Sometimes you have to kind of play the game where your audience is. But that's what I was going to ask you next is, if we imagine, because I do understand the argument of getting help with social media and with marketing. I have a feeling that a lot of business owners in general, and I think this would apply to practices as well, they are going to try first themselves. Is there something that they can practically do themselves, seeing how busy they might be in terms of like the very first pieces of content? Let's say, I think, where you specialize is likely the video realm, like Instagram as a channel. So what are some types of videos they might be able to put out there just to test the waters and see if there's any sort of response?
Definitely. I would always start with a "Who am I?" video, letting people know who you are, what you do, why you do it, and, just whatever it is within your business that lights you up inside, talk about that. I would suggest you talk about some sort of trending or relevant topic that's going on in your world, wherever you live right now. I'd recommend you do that. And then I would just recommend you, let's see, maybe one more. You talk about a transformation with one of your clients and you give as much detail as possible, story tell, make us actually feel it like we're inside of the story with you or inside of the treatment room with you. And those will be the 3 that I would start with. Simply if you don't have the capacity to delegate or you're just getting started. And then one more, I have to give you one more. Just mount the phone up. Mount the phone up while you are in the middle of a consultation with a client and go back and make clips later. Like, just little clips to cut them out of that long video later. And it just simply makes people on the other side of the screen, it just makes them almost feel as though they're in the treatment room with you.
That's interesting. So by mount the phone up, you mean I need to be able to visualize this. You put it in one place in the room and it's kind of a static shot, and then you pick clips from that?
Well, you can do that, but if you were my client, I would I would encourage you to get multiple angles. Leave it and again, yes, I know it takes some extra effort out of you, but that's what this is all about. It does take effort, right? Nothing that you want is gonna come easy. So yes, mount the phone up in different areas. Just try to get at least maybe 3 different angles, maybe 4 if on a good day. And then, yes, you can use that and, cut up the clips, and it's almost like we're there. We're your patient for a day.
I can absolutely understand. It shows your specialization, right? Because I'm thinking that you're focused on esthetician practices, and definitely, here the visual component is really important. And I want to kind of stay in this area of expertise. One thing that comes to mind though is, and I don't know if this is necessarily a challenge or not. I do love telling clients stories. I think in any sort of marketing, it's really, really useful. With something that is, an aesthetic procedure or a medical procedure, do you have any advice, or is it ever a challenge to get consent from the client? How do you actually approach the conversation of, hey, you just came in for a visit, but could I put you up on Instagram too?
That comes up all the time. This is a topic that I'm always, talking about with my clients. So here's the thing. When it comes to a patient receiving any type of treatments or services in a medical facility, right? They already have to fill out consent forms. It's just a matter of are your consent forms specific enough? And that's what I find. Most of them are very vague. So, when I go to an account to do a content day, I'm usually there for 2 days, right? I have my own consent form. I mean, the provider keeps it, my client keeps it, but I just have it so where it's very detailed, where the client, their patient, they know what they're signing up for, and they understand the terms, the conditions, what we expect from them, and yada, yada, yada. So, it can be a very awkward ask, but you gotta get used to it. That's just kinda how I see it. We have some offices where it's a part of their intake process. If a client is coming in and let's say they're getting, filler because that's noticeable before and after, it's a part of their process to snap the before photo and then snap the after photo. And you will have clients that will say, "Absolutely not. I don't," but you still have to ask, be in the motion of asking constantly and just understand you will get a few no's, and that's fine. You move on to the next.
And I can absolutely understand that piggybacking off of an existing consent form kind of lowers the invasiveness of the ask. If it's a writing, they don't feel so, it's not so in your face. Like when you ask somebody, especially like after the procedure or right before, can we take a picture? Understand that. It's really smart advice. And I love this kind of tactical stuff that really makes the difference of, how many of these are you're gonna get. Sometimes even with talking, we talk with our clients using our AI medical receptionists. And instead of setting up a separate meeting to interview a client, I would go to one of their check-ins with our customer success managers. They would introduce me and they would say, "Oh, the meeting ended 10 minutes early. And here's Jakub. Maybe you would like to say a few words about the cooperation." And you'll have that, off your head already. You wouldn't have to think about it at a later date. You'll just give us a brief interview. And we record via Riverside, like the podcast here today, to capture these interviews. So it's all about being clever. It's all about being kind of guerrilla tactics sometimes.
Absolutely, because they still work no matter what the young Gen Z try to tell you, they still work.
Exactly. One more question about these transformation videos. Then I wanted to go just a touch deeper here. What are the most important elements of a video like that? I feel like those are some of the most important assets you can have, especially if you do have a visual effect of what you're doing. So like, how do you structure that video? Is it before and after? It probably gets more complex than that.
So, authenticity. Be as authentic as you possibly can. Nothing staged. Nobody wants to see anything staged anymore. And especially when it comes to, like high-end treatments and services. So, be as authentic as possible. Talk about what did the patient experience prior to her being treated by you or him. I just like to say her because I love us. What was this patient experiencing prior to coming in? Did they have fine lines and wrinkles? Did they not like smiling when they walked into a room? Did they, try to hide their teeth or, you know, hollowness under the eyes? Like, be as specific because those specific details will identify with the listening ear or the whomever's watching. And then talk about your transformation, your treatment. You proposed this treatment for this patient who is suffering with XYZ, and this is what we did on her today. Brownie points if you can actually get the client to be a part of the video when you are, talking about this. Try to include all of those elements together to get more of an authentic video that will make the end user feel something, not just that they're watching, because people always remember how you make them feel. So you want to activate their feelings and you use those identifiers that that client is struggling with so it can relate on the other end.
Yeah, I love that. I really love that. I think that totally tracks. I see videos. Well, I might not be seeing esthetician videos on my feed, but there's this guy who does cat grooming. What he does, from an editing point of view, it's really interesting. He would initially show just a few very quick snippets, a little bit of cutting the kitty's nails, a little bit of maybe shaving the cat, and then giving the cat a bath, right? If the cat is particularly feisty, they'll show just a split, a second of that. So just a few, really quick flashes, and then it'll launch into the video proper. So I think that's also a clever editing trick that might be used there. So I would just add that from my own end. And gosh, I have a feeling we could talk about just this particular point, for the whole episode almost, because I mean, video editing and video production is its whole discipline. You mentioned though a couple other things that I think might have provoked a reaction from the audience. So in particular, you mentioned that to promote themselves, practice managers might want to go out into their community. You also mentioned building an email list. By going out into the community, what do you mean by that? Because that's totally different from being active on Instagram. So let's go into another direction here.
So, being active within your local community, again, it brings more awareness and it builds more trust, right? That can look let me give you an example. You could build a collaboration with a local gym, right? So now you are collaborating with them. You guys are kind of sharing an audience. And in aesthetics, why a gym collaboration would do well is because the gym is already full of people who are interested in self image, how they look, how they feel, all that kind of stuff. So it's the perfect audience. So that's one example when I say get out into in the community. A grassroots marketing, have someone from the front desk. This is, I mean, we literally used to do this. We would have someone from the front desk go out into the local community, just, neighboring businesses, wherever it's safe, right? And just simply go in with a smiling face, maybe take some office paraphernalia, take some sort of cookies or a sweet treat, and simply say, hey, this is so and so. I work at the plastic surgeon's office down the road. We're offering this month, blah, blah, blah. Or you should come in and get a free facial, or tell all your coworkers, that those types of things, because they do still work. And as long as you get the right person to do this, like someone that actually has a personality, that likes to talk, that's easy on the eyes, you will get a return from it, because mainly because people don't expect it anymore, because everything is so automated and AI generated and fast this and fast that. So it's kind of it's taking it back to the grassroots marketing, boots to the ground, but it's something that works. And then another thing would be hosting events. Host a simple event. Again, have special pricing. It's not just a lot of people have events because it's a good time, but I want you to make money. I want you to have a profitable event. So, decide on different packages, have special pricing, promote the event, run some ads behind the RSVPs. And again, if you work with a marketing company that knows what they're doing, that exposure will get out to the right people. You'll have a packed house, and now you increase the chances of one, getting more people in your local area to know about you, and for two, you increase the chances of increasing sales and revenue.
I love that. I love that. And I love how specific you were with this. I absolutely agree. I think this is actually one of my marketing predictions, for this year and moving forward is because there's so much competition for what's happening on your phone screen. Whenever you can enter somebody's physical space in a, like you mentioned, non-invasive and positive way, that's going to be such a huge benefit, I feel. Everything that shows up on your screen, there's so much competition for it. And as you mentioned, now there's this additional skepticism of what I'm looking at. Is it even real or is it AI generated? That if you can do that, then I absolutely see that. And it's interesting because you're mentioning a type of marketing that I personally am not that familiar with. I've always done digital marketing, global, worldwide, and looking at your local community, it's quite a different game. One tiny question about events is in terms of tips on how to kind of increase their conversion. I love what you said about, the events should also make you money. So would it also make sense to run something like a raffle or like a contest? Do you have like a recipe for that?
Oh, yes, I do. So first off, I think this is the perfect opportunity to plug my med spa event planning checklist. You guys can go get that free off my website. It's a free download, and it's actually one of my audience's favorite because I get, they eat this one up because it's so much information inside. I give you lots of like step by steps, but let me tell you this. Okay, so yes, raffles, giveaways, all that fun stuff, simply because when the wondering eye is looking, they're wanting to know, well, what is in this for me? Yes, I'm gonna go to this event, but what am I gonna leave with that I don't have to pay for? So yes, raffles and giveaways, those are one of the main things that we lead with. And I always try to encourage my clients to inject on site. Now, there are specific things that have to be done to make sure you're compliant and you're doing this the right way. But if you have the capacity, inject on site because it's a quick cash injection. And give yourself enough time to let people know about this event. Like we're not hosting an event in April and then we're promoting in March. Like we need, actually this is funny. So The Devil Wears Prada, right? 2. I don't know. Okay. The Devil Wears Prada 2. It's coming out May the 1st. We saw trailers for this, I want to say maybe a week ago, and it's coming out May the 1st. So do you see how much time in between they have to campaign, to promote, to go on podcasts, talk shows, all the things. So you have to give yourself more time. So again, you can get more eyes on your event.
Exactly, and even fill that time. I think I've been hearing about Devil Wears Prada too. Didn't Meryl Streep go to like Fashion Week in character last year? That was the first kind of teaser for it.
Yes, she did. Yeah. So see, they look how soon they started, right? And that's so smart. Now they're gonna get more people to, be engaged and talk about it and go see it.
That checklist you mentioned, I will definitely put a link in the show notes to that so that watchers and listeners you can get that. I'm a proponent of checklists. We have our own the AI patient adoption checklist on our Talkie site. Now that I mention it, we'll put that in the show notes as well for anybody who's interested in that, because it is a separate challenge. Adopting AI, patients sometimes have some issues in the beginning weeks and months. But anyway, that's neither here nor there for this particular topic. One quick question about building the email list. Then I want to talk about lead management, definitely. So building the email list, could you just share, first of all, how to get people to sign up? And second, what tool would be good to use, easy enough to use for somebody running solo or a small practice?
A lot of medical practices they're just stunned when I tell them things like you need to grow your email list. Even if the patient has not been in your office, you still need to have ways that you can capture data from patients who are potentially interested in the service you provide. They're just not ready. They're just not ready right now, but they will be later on. So, a few things that we implement with our clients are skincare checklists or guides or PDFs or virtual consultations. Again, if you have the capacity, just anything that we can offer digitally mainly, and again, some accounts, because they have someone who will send this out, we offer these little mini gift basket sets. If you opt in, you'll receive one, right? So you just got to get creative when it comes to the practice and what their overall goals are. And then the second part of that question you asked about it, if you were doing it on your own. A lot of the EMRs, EHRs, patient record systems, and things like that, they come with communication tools. They come with internal tools that are used to communicate with your audience. That's it. That's where it stops. It's just communication. It's a communication blast tool, if you will. So you're not able to do things like check open rates, check analytics, check click through rate, and things like that. Which I think you as the provider, you shouldn't be spending time doing that anyway. So I would just say stick to the communication tool that's in your patient record system. And this Cherie 4 or 5 years ago would never say that. I would never ever say that, but now that I know how complex a lot of these email marketing platforms can be, I would just say keep it simple and do what you know until you're ready to delegate.
I love that. There's different calibers of tools for different scales of organization, and definitely there's something to be said for if it's already built into the platform that you use every day. Don't overcomplicate. There'll be time to grow later. Excellent. So we touched upon a few things today. I think that was a lot of practical advice, and I feel almost guilty because there's this whole other world that I want to talk with you about. But let's see how far we can get into. So lead management, right? I know that even, currently your Instagram account, that's its name, right? Lead management for practices. And this is a bit of a different story from marketing. I think, a lot of practices are thinking we need to do something about our marketing. Maybe not all of them are thinking we need to do something about our lead management because it feels like such a specific piece of it already. So could we start with, how would you define lead management? Like which parts of a practice's life are those and why is it so important?
Okay, so it's so important because if you're not following up with leads and you don't have a solid lead management flow or system, then you're basically wasting marketing dollars because marketing is made to get the interest, build trust, get people to opt into your newsletter or schedule an appointment or go on the website and request a callback. That's what marketing does. But if no one is there on the other end to call that person back in an appropriate time frame or to respond to their email before they email another medical spa down the road, then boom, now you've lost them. And I see a lot of medical practices, particularly dentists, cosmetic dentists, they are investing thousands of dollars in paid ads, but then there's no one there to answer the inquiries that are coming through the website, or the phones are ringing off the hook. I've been in many medical offices where the phone is literally just ringing off the hook. And yeah, they're my clients. So I'm burning up inside because I'm like, that's money calling. Why is there no one answering this phone? So marketing just drives the interest, but lead management, it scores the goal. That's what gets them on the schedule. If it's owned by too many people, like if too many people have their hands in the pot, then 9 times out of 10, there's no method, there's no system. People are just doing things, nobody knows. But what did you call Miss Smith back? Miss Smith sent in an inquiry on the website, says she's interested in RF microneedling. How many times did you call her? Oh, we only called her once. Okay, did you leave a message? Did you call again? What happened? Do you plan to call again? Because that's where the money really resides, and this is a big part of the puzzle that is either not done efficiently or it's just not freaking done at all.
Yeah, I understand. And you definitely built a case of why it's important to talk about that. Just wanted to touch upon one thing. You were mentioning the phone ringing off the hook. Anytime that phrase comes up, I'm glad that, for example, what we do at Talkie, that it exists because it can pick up and filter those calls. A lot of the practices we work with actually set it up so that if it's an existing patient to schedule an appointment or something like that, Talkie handles that. But if it's a new patient, that can sometimes go, depending on the needs and the kind of customization done by the practice or requested by the practice, that can actually go through and that makes the phone ring. So in that case, you're even more right, you're even more correct because that is literally money calling because Talkie took over the other calls. This one is a new patient. You can score some new revenue from that call. So this definitely, the two worlds collide here. Now, staying in the realm of lead management, you mentioned there is no method. You mentioned there's maybe this distributed responsibility that doesn't really work. So then what's the recipe? How do you actually start fixing that? Because I feel like a lot of people can start feeling the problem, especially now that you painted the picture so vividly, what to do about it.
One person needs to be responsible for lead management, just one person. It doesn't need to be divided among several people. There needs to be one person that's responsible, and this person also should be incentivized because if they first of all, people just again they like what's in it for them. They love free things. People love a challenge. They love a competition. And if you can incentivize them and tell them something like, hey, at the end of the month, if you're able to, work with the marketing team and close 45% lead to consultation rate, then we will give you, I don't know, a day off, or we will give you a $500 gift card, or, whatever it is that you want to do to incentivize that person. But I've seen the best results come from when it's owned by one person is responsible for it, and they work closely with us because it is a joint effort.
By us, you mean the marketing team or
The marketing
yeah,
us as the marketing team, correct. I have a business partner, and when I say us, I have a business partner, so she works, we both work with the clients together, so
I understand. I understand. So my next question was going to be, okay, one person. I think some practices are gonna be able to do that. Just put that responsibility on one person. What kind of person should it be? Who would be the best for this kind of job?
I love that question. So let me start by saying this too. When I say one person, I don't mean the same person that's doing your billing, that's answering your phones, that's checking people in, checking people out, assisting on the side. not that person, okay? So I wanna make that clear because we don't wanna add more. This needs to be a delegated role or even given to someone who doesn't already have a lot on their task, but this is just I just wanted to say that because it's again, a big problem that I see in medical practices is they got 1 or 2 people at the front desk doing jobs of 8 people, right? So, we're not saying add this on. Now, when it comes to the type of person that should be handling lead management, I would say, type of person with an A-type personality that likes to talk to people, that is tenacious, that's slightly aggressive, but not too aggressive to where they're running people off. One that would know how to read the room because sometimes it's appropriate to give price and information over the phone. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes the goal is always to get in on the schedule. But you just kinda again, you gotta read the room, read the conversation. And again, it's just very important to make sure the person chosen for this position, they know the caliber of what their results will bring to the overall goal of the practice, and that's to get more business, more, more new patients on the schedule.
And if that person is selected, then I mean, I love the answer. Sometimes I feel like I should have been a salesperson, because some of the characteristics you mentioned there, I have some of them, and then some of them I don't have. Why am I even thinking about that? Anyway, I was going to ask, okay, there's choosing the right type of person, and then what do you tell that person as they get that role? One thing that I already heard is imprint on them how important this is, what the stakes are. But then how do you train them for the role to give them the best chance of success?
Treat the person on the other end of the phone like an individual. Think about it like it's the tip or the start of an experience, and you control the wheel. You can decide if that experience goes up or if it goes down to you know what. Okay, you can decide that. So treat it like an experience and just be kind, be nice because obviously with everything that's going on right now, people just want compassion, and they want to know that they can talk to someone that's gonna make them feel seen and heard. So that's what I would say.
I think it goes a long way to be compassionate, to be real. My particular thing is so sometimes I use AI for writing. I swear this is relevant, right? And I ask ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini to analyze my style of writing. And one thing that always comes is like humorously self-deprecating, And I honestly believe that is the way to go in some areas of life, maybe not too much, but if you put yourself out there, if you take a little bit of a jab at yourself, that makes people really, open up is what I found, and it's fun to do.
Absolutely. So one of my mentors, they always tell me, to make fun of yourself, to kind of talk about yourself, talk about your failures. Where did you mess up? Let's show because social media has painted itself to be, so perfect, and most people so perfect highlight. They want to show the good, never the bad. It's a pattern interrupt when we come in and we're like, "Oh my goodness, I just lost a $20,000 client," or, just something, "Here's what I learned from it." People gravitate towards stuff like that.
So, can we get into the minutia here for a second? I think somebody thinking about that, listening to this is gonna think, okay, I know what kind of person to pick, I know what to tell them, but what is the actual playbook I should give them? So, for example, I mean, I might be naive here, but I'm wondering if I had that kind of person, what would I tell them about like how often to call the leads? You don't want to call them every day, I imagine, but like what would be the specifics here?
So, I have this 3 times rule. Then after 3 times, you exhaust your efforts. It used to be before all this spam phone calls, before all the junk phone calls, it would used to be call 3 times until you get an answer. But now, because a lot of people don't answer the phone because they don't know who it is on the other end, I say text first, then call, then email, right? And when you text, we're not texting to ask for permission to call. We're texting and we're saying, "Hi, Miss Smith. I just received your inquiry through the website. I'm about to call you from blah, 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 whatever number. Then give it a minute and then call them. But we're not saying, "Hi, Miss Smith. Is it okay to call you now?" Because if I was Miss Smith, I would tell you, "No, it's not okay. You should have called earlier when I wanted to when I wanted to talk to you." So, yeah, just making sure you try to contact the client at least 3 times before you exhaust your efforts. And then again, with the way of the world, that constantly changes. I always say 3, and you wanna always consider where we are in this digital world right now.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's good to have a rule here. Are there any other such rules that you typically observe, or anything else that is there a script for the conversation, for example?
No, I'm not really a big fan of scripts because I feel like when you are giving someone a script, you're trying to push them in the direction of being nice, and you can't teach people how to be nice, right? So what I would suggest is something that we used to do in plastics back in the day. We put mirrors at our front desk, like mirrors where we can see ourselves. And when we're talking on the and this was for the new patient coordinators, right? So when we're talking on the phone, we're literally looking at ourselves, and if we have a smile on our face, we know the patients can feel it through the phone. That's a good old hack that I will always stand true to because I know it works.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely it's one of those pieces of advice that you hear it once and it often bears repeating throughout your life because it applies to so many other things, but you can hear the smile. You can hear the smile, and whether it's, whether it's any kind of call, any kind of conversation, and even in person, it pays off to bring that positive energy. Might be basic, but it actually works. So, one last question I had for you within this topic is during one of our previous conversations, you said that great marketing will expose the internal flaws within the office. That really caught my attention. And I was wondering if, while we're recording, while we're on air, could you expand on that? What did you mean by that? What kind of situations do you mean here? And actually, what kind of problem is this and how to address it?
Okay, yes, absolutely. So, back to the whole idea behind marketing, right? Marketing is to create interest, is to build trust, is to drive leads. If it's done right, it's going to drive an influx of leads to your business. Now, once these leads come in, like we talked about earlier, I often measure the lead to consultation rate. Now I told you 45% on up is just what I love to go by. Anything lower can be a little alarming. So what I say by great marketing will expose internal office flaws. If we see that we've generated 50 leads in a matter of 30 days, right? And we know that because we check the schedules and we see that only 10 people out of those 50 ended up on the schedule. To me, that's alarming. To me, that says, "Uh-oh, hold on, something ain't right. The math ain't mathing. We need to we need to dig deeper, and we need to peel back the onion, and then we need to figure out what is going on internally because something is going on internally." So then we do things like listen to phone calls. We look at transcript. If I'm actually at the office, 'cause, some of my accounts I'm there, I'll listen. I can observe different things, how you interact with patients. Maybe you were very short. Maybe you gave pricing information when you shouldn't have. So it's gonna it's gonna allow us to kinda dissect little things that are preventing that lead to consultation rate to increase, because there are various things. It's not just one thing, when you and especially the more staff you deal with, you discover all sorts of things, and that is something that we could literally sit here and talk about for another 3 hours.
I can absolutely imagine that. But, not for nothing, I keep having these conversations and I keep getting ideas for like follow-up webinars, perhaps, more stuff that we could do. But hey, that's maybe in the cards for the future. I would add to that it's, one part of this conversion rate equation is definitely how you talk to the leads once you come in, but I think it also bears some analysis and some time to look at where the leads are coming from and which ones are actually converting better. You mentioned already in the first part of the conversation various ways to get them. It can be from an event, it can be from something that you did online. So which ones of those, for example, down the line are converting better? Because I think, that's also it informs how you actually act on the top of the funnel, so to speak, right? On the first stages, the first contact, like, because that tells you, should you be doing more social media, should you be doing more email, or should you be doing more physical events, right?
Correct. And that is a big mistake that I see a lot of practices make. They're not simply asking that question during intake. How did you find out about us? It's a very simple question. And then every types of marketing outlets that you're using to promote your business, they should be on that drop down menu. Like you said, email, events. Did you find us on Google? Did you read a blog post? However, analyze that information, because what gets measured gets improved. And if you know you're putting this much input into Instagram, for example, but nobody's booking, then it might be time to switch your strategy.
Exactly, exactly. I feel strongly about this. I joined Talkie as head of marketing. Within the first month, we added to the form, because we didn't have that question. We added this to the form. Where are they coming from? For them to self-report where they're coming from. There's always going to be a little bit of noise. People put in Google, but they actually found you through Google Ads. They just don't necessarily see. That's a classic, right? Don't necessarily see the difference. But still, even this morning, I was reporting on the leads coming into Talkie, and I was so grateful to, like, past me for taking this step, because I had that information in hand. Who's coming in through, sometimes from ChatGPT, or maybe through the Athena Health Marketplace, for example, because we're listed there too. Bunch of different sources, and that's definitely, I can see that it applies not just in the realm of AI software for healthcare practices.
Yeah, definitely. That's the golden rule. You have to ask that question during our onboarding. That's one of my main things. I'm asking, do you have a way currently to find out self-input, like you said? I don't I don't depend on the staff to do it. It needs to be done by the patient to say where they came from. And you will be surprised, a lot of practices are not asking that question.
Exactly. They call us marketers kind of creatives with their heads in the clouds, but it's not true. We're some of the most analytical and investigative people out there.
Well, one thing that I have learned, I know this is a little off topic, but one thing that I've learned in my journey of being an entrepreneur is that I am both, right? I am that creative, like very creative person with my head in the clouds, but I'm also an analytical person, because I have a very great understanding of what I do creatively. It affects those numbers. And then you get to a point to where you're looking at the numbers, and now your numbers will affect what you do creatively, but you got to start with the creative mindset.
You need to have both modes. You need to have both modes, and I think this is also part of why people hire marketers, because it's not, at the end of the day, it's not easy to be able to juggle both of these balls, and then there's more to that kind of come into the equation. So yeah, definitely agree with that. And oh gosh, we touched upon so many topics here today. I feel like I would just ask one last question. If there's anything else, I call this my insurance question, because if I ask poor questions, this one will catch all the rest. Is there anything else that you wanted to share in this area of, marketing, lead management, that I neglected to ask about, that you would still like to leave with our audience?
Honestly, I think that you did a very good job. Your questions were very thorough and on point, and we covered a lot, because we talked about marketing, which again generates the interest, builds the trust, gets your name out there, make sure people know who you are, what you do. And then we talked about the next important piece to that puzzle, which is lead management. And if the lead management system or lack of system is not there, then you are wasting marketing dollars. So I think that you did a very good job with allowing me to convey that in the most simple way.
Thank you. Thank you. That was too nice. We'll cut that out. Okay. All right. Okay. So to tie a bow on the conversation, then, Shuri, where can people find you and follow you? Where would you like them to go to connect with you and to get exposed to your content, your ideas, and to talk with you?
Absolutely. I would recommend going to my website, which is Cheri Cobb Creative. So it's my first name, my last name, creative.com. And from there, you'll be able to find my Instagram, you'll be able to find my TikTok. Just to kind of throw something out here right now, I actually have two TikTok accounts, but I am literally about to merge them both together. Well, not technically merge them both together. But I'm about to just stop one and just go all in on my main account. And it's mainly how I have it now. I have kinda like the fun Cherie, and I do a lot of restaurant reviews and things like that on one of my accounts. And then my other account is my business account. But I'm overwhelmed. Let me just say that. I'm overwhelmed with trying to keep up with both. So I'm just gonna start posting everything that I like to do and eat and go on one account, and then I'm gonna also talk about my business on that account, and we'll see what happens. So, I didn't want people to be confused, okay? I needed to kinda put that out there, and then I also have a YouTube channel, which is also Cheri Cobb, but again, most things can be found, at my hub, which is my website, CheriCobbCreative.com.
Awesome. So we'll drop a link to that in the show notes, and that's going to be the hub, as you mentioned, the portal to everything else. That's great, and thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for the conversation, Shuri. I had a ton of fun with this episode, and isn't that the most important KPI? So, for you watchers and listeners tuning in for the first time, welcome to Scaling Practice Management. I hope you'll stay with us longer, and to be able to do that, don't forget to subscribe, leave a reaction, leave a comment. Let's start a discussion in the comments. Follow us and rate us on the podcast platforms. We're still building up our rep in that respect, but we're getting more and more traction every day. Love hosting this show and love seeing it grow. Shuri, thank you once again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This was a great and insightful conversation. So I can't wait to share it with our listeners.
Yes, we'll talk publication timeline in just a second off the record. But for now, thank you so much, dear watchers and listeners, for tuning in today. And I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.